Welcome. My name is Jim Tincher. I am the CEO of Heart of the Customer, a customer experience researcher, an author. Heck, I am a customer experience geek and a ServiceNow partner. I'd like to start by thanking ServiceNow for sponsoring this LinkedIn Live. Now, those who know me know I love great research. I conduct a fair amount of research myself, and I love when I get a chance to review great research. And so when ServiceNow reached out and said, we've got some research, I jumped in. And this is probably the largest study I've ever seen. 34,000 respondents, not 100,000 respondents across 18 countries, 8 industries. This has got to be the most comprehensive study I've ever seen. And to share it with you today, I brought in Michael Ramsey from ServiceNow. Michael, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Jim. It's great to be here. My name is Michael Ramsey, and I lead our CRM products here at ServiceNow. I've been at ServiceNow for a little over 6 years, all within the CRM space. Right now, I'm focused on customer service and our customer service products, but I've been in the industry a long time. I've over 25 years, so I'm dating myself a little bit. But I'm with you. I've been in this space a long time, and it still is fascinating to me. And I think right now, if you look at all of the focus on AI, it's kind of centered on our space from an investment standpoint and from a capability standpoint. So looking forward to the conversation.
All right. And there is a ton of content in the report. And ServiceNow would not let me do a 12-hour LinkedIn Live. So we're going to give you a preview of some of the more compelling parts, but you'll get a link to the entire study. Where we're going to focus today are the gaps between what customers want and what they get. We'll talk about why service reps are struggling and then give some tips for leaders on what to do about it. Now, it looks like somebody jumped in ahead of me. I was about to say, if you have questions or thoughts, please, there it is, reach out to the comments. Leave us a message. Now, we're about a minute delayed, so we won't see it right away, but we have folks who are monitoring it. So if you have questions, reactions, please share them in the chat, and we'll look at them as we go throughout it. But let's hop into the research, and let's start with what do customers want? And of course, it's never one thing. In this case, 2 things jump to the top. When they look at service, they look at AI, they want speed and they want empathy. Now, the speed doesn't surprise anybody. That's what customers always want in service. They want to solve their problems quickly. But what happens when that problem can't be solved quickly? Well, we see that customers want empathy, and it's generally not happening. In fact, when we ask for the biggest challenge when there's a service experience, you see that half of them say the biggest challenge is a lack of empathy. Now, 53%, they're looking for speed and efficiency as expect. And what happens when you get that part wrong? Well, you're at risk because almost half of customers said they would switch if they're getting poor or slow service. And so there are 2 key outcomes here. Speed, yes, but when it doesn't work well, customers want empathy. And what we find is that organizations are only focusing on half of that. They're focusing on speed, but they're automating the human out of the experience. So, Michael, what jumps out to you from the data?
Yeah, I think you've covered it well from a top level. I think there's multiple factors at play here. I think you're right in terms of if you can't quickly, resolve a customer issue or fulfill whatever requests they have, empathy goes a long way. But I think it's even before that. So if you think about maybe your personal experiences, let's say you're traveling and you have an issue, with a flight, or your flight got canceled and you need to reschedule it or whatever, you're coming into the conversation, in this case with a customer service rep, and you're probably not in a great place. You're stressed out about rebooking your flight or whatever. And so I think just having the proper context of what that customer is going through, and frankly, capturing what intent they have, what requests they have, quickly, so that you can effectively help them, is also part of it. So I think the other point that I would say around speed is the industry has historically focused a lot on operational excellence and how can I be efficient with my own team, kind of inside out thinking versus outside in thinking, and really focusing on the customer experience and how they're approaching the engagement. So I think it's multifaceted in terms of really what is being surfaced with this part of the survey.
Yeah, definitely. And it reminds me of some other research. I actually shared this on Monday with the Advanced Manufacturing Customer Experience Consortium. So a very different space, manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at what leads a customer to want to grow with you, to expand their share of wallet. Mm-hmm. And what was the number one factor that led an executive to want to grow with their supplier? It wasn't product quality. It wasn't service. It was, do I feel like a valued customer? And so very congruent what we're finding here is that even executives said, I want empathy. And in fact, something I learned in that study, this is going to blow your mind, is we learned that actually procurement agents also have emotions. Yeah, I know, it's amazing. I hadn't expected that. And for them, again, empathy mattered. And so we're hearing the same thing in B2B, in B2C. Customers want a human experience. Yes, they want to make it easy, but when that doesn't work, they need to know that they're important.
Yep. Yeah, Jim, maybe I'll give you another anecdote. We've worked with a lot of customers, especially applying AI and AI agents to customer self-service. And you might think, again, it's all about being able to capture the customer intent. What do they want? Giving it to them, which obviously is super important. But we found things like, knowing who that customer is, talking to them, using their first name in the conversation, even with an AI agent, actually leads to better outcomes than if you don't. So there's even those simple kind of human touches matter.
100%. And those who are out there may be thinking, okay, so Jim and Michael are talking about we need to have agents talk to everybody. We're going to blow our budgets talking to customers all the time. No, that's not what we're saying. And in fact, that's not what your customers are saying either. They're saying instead, 3/4 of them say, I want self-service. I want to start by solving my problem on my own. They're not anti-technology. But when the service fails, that's when empathy becomes critical. And almost half say chatbots don't understand their questions. So that's been key here, where they want self-service. The empathy comes in when it fails. So, Michael, what do you want to do when the chatbot doesn't understand? What do you want? What do you want? What should be happening here? What are we taking away?
Yeah. So, and again, I think one of the great things about the customer service space is we're all customers of some company or brand. So I think we can all use our anecdotal experience, in this space. And I don't think it's not just about, when a self-service experience fails. Obviously that happens, and then you need to be able to escalate to, a human agent or a human customer service rep or whatever the context is. And so I do think that's a huge part of, coming from the technology side and the software side. Like, we ensure that any of our customers, any of the brands that use our products, they can seamlessly escalate to a human from a self-service experience. And it's not the classic anybody who uses bank services, who goes through in old school IVR, or now voice agents, and they authenticate who they are, what they're trying to do, and then they end up repeating that when they get transferred to a live agent. Like, there's no reason to have to do those things now. Like, we can do that seamlessly now. But I also think there are times, either for regulatory reasons or whatever, where you're limited in what you allow your customers to do self-service wise. But even in those scenarios, you can give a great customer experience. I prefer a self-service experience if I can help myself, just because I don't have to wait. I can get what I want quickly and easily. And for example, going back to a banking example, there are regulations in terms of if you want to do a wire transfer, like how much you can do self-service versus having to talk to a live agent. But if you can actually capture what the transfer I'm trying to make, and then you transfer to a live agent to actually perform, and basically confirm what I want to do, that still makes it easier for me. And it's a faster experience. It's a better experience. So I really think that you really need to start with, what are all of the products and services that you deliver to your customers? Based on those products and services, what are they entitled to? What kind of requests can they make? And really make sure that you have a great self-service experience for all of those that you're allowed to to support. But then you can also allow live agents, human agents, to perform those on behalf of the customer. But to me, it's got to be kind of self-service first, and making sure that you have a great self-service experience.
And it's designing around the customer, around the customer's outcomes, knowing that when you do that, your company will prosper.
Exactly. And again, like we said up front, like, you've got to be viewing this through your customer and kind of that outside in experience, and not just optimizing your own operations.
Exactly. And knowing, and that's the key thing, also coming back to measurement, is that being able to link what you're doing here to repeat purchases, retention, so on.
Exactly.
And so now we heard the research that 3 out of 4 customers want to self-service first, but about half say when they go to the chatbot, it doesn't understand the questions. So what do they do next? Well, it might interest you to know that next what they do is they call. And when the survey asked customers, what are your preferred channels? 7 out of 8 said the phone. So obviously then, since so many customers want to call when there's a problem, when the chatbot can't understand, when the self-service fails, almost everybody wants to call. Obviously, executives are then prioritizing that, right? Coming back to Michael's comment about you want to design around the customer. So everybody's focusing on making that phone call experience great, right? Well, not so much. Yet only 7% of the executives said they plan to optimize the phone channel over the next 3 years. I'm going to share a personal anecdote. I haven't shared this in the past in any of my writing about my Ring. And my Ring, the battery died. And so I just went, I had an extended warranty. I went to the manufacturer, and I have everything in this manufacturer. I have my phone, I have my computer, I have my tablet, I have my watch, all with this same supplier. And so I went to do self-service because the battery broke, and it said, oh, I'm sorry. And they shipped me over to the extended warranty organization, who said, but this is a regular warranty, and shifted me back to get shifted back. One night I spent 4 hours just trying to get the issue resolved because it broke. And there was no way to call. There was no phone. Finally, I found a back door after 4 hours. I talked to the person, and then suddenly she said, I can't hear you, hung up. And when I called back, they were closed for the day. So clearly this organization has not focused on making the experience great and to prioritizing the phone. Your customers aren't anti-AI, they're anti-being trapped. So you need to give them a way out when it's not working. And the phone is the most common way that they want to do that. So Michael, well, how should organizations balance this automation with the human connection?
Yeah, so I think one, that's a powerful story that you shared kind of on your own experience. And I think all of us probably have similar experiences somewhere in our past. I think first, voice actually for me in my conversations, yes, there is this kind of trend that the survey is showing where there's a lack of investment in voice in the phone channel. But I think that's a little bit of kind of a trailing indicator where, historically self-service experiences over voice have been very poor, and that, everybody's familiar with going into an IVR tree and getting lost or having a bad experience, not being able to accomplish anything. And you just, you start yelling agent into your phone to try to get to a live agent. And I think this is where technology is showing a lot of promise in terms of applying AI to voice self-service experiences. And at ServiceNow, we're investing heavily in this space and working with a lot of great early customers. And I think that this will change actually in the relatively near future, because we're just able to give much better self-service experiences. Going back to the previous survey question that we were just talking about in terms of self-service, I think one of the answers here is delivering a great voice self-service experience, so that it is not seen, as the historical, kind of cost center where the only way I can scale to meet my customer demands is to have more human agents, in a call center. And so I do think that is changing, and it's not just, handling kind of simple Q&A kind of questions. I think it's starting with trying to take workload off of the human agent. So, for example, performing things like authenticate the customer, make sure that you can understand what is their intent, why are they calling you, making sure that you can transfer that to the live agent and make for a much better experience for the live agent as well as the customer. And it also make everyone happy on optimizing their operations, because it'll be faster calls, it'll be more successful calls. But I do think that we're rapidly handling, more and more complex use cases through pure self-service too, where, you're gonna need to get to a live agent less going forward. So I would say it's, again, a lot of these. I think there's kind of a multifaceted behind the question.
Yeah, and you talk about the improvement in self-service. It's great when your questions be anticipated. Like I've seen cases where you were just on chat. Are you calling about that? Yes. Okay, now I can pick up again without having to start over again. Contrast to other organizations where I have to give all my information first, like in health insurance, give my member ID. And the first thing the agent asks me is, what's your member ID? So it is possible to create a relatively empathetic experience using AI. It's also possible to create a non-empathetic experience using a human. It all comes from designing around your customers.
Yep. Completely agree.
So now what happens when you get to the agent? So you've gone self-service. 3 out of 4 want to go through self-service.
Mm-hmm.
You now need help because the chatbot didn't understand you, for example, and you get to an agent. What is that agent going through? And in a holy 2000s Batman moment, we found from the survey that 4 out of 5 reps say they have to log in to 3 to 5 different systems to address a customer issue. Now, I thought we took care of this 20 years ago, but it's still happening out there. And as a result, that valuable agent, that agent you've invested in, you've taken time to hire the right person, you've educated them, you're building their career. Where do they spend their time? Well, only 45% of the time is spent solving the customer problem, taking care of issues. Now, there's a lot more data in the study that we're not going to show here, but for example, 43% of reps say that the biggest issue is inconsistent data, whereas only 1 out of 4 executives agree. And only 39% of reps feel they have the tools and training to give a superior customer experience. So we're finding a lot of gaps between what the agents need and what the executives think they need. So, Michael, your reactions to that?
Yeah, yes. First, I'm with you. This is one of those evergreen issues that, I feel like we were tackling in the late 90s, again, to date myself. But actually, I think it's, again, I see at least 2 different aspects of it. One is, yes, we still have a lot of agent experiences where they're swiveling between multiple tools to solve a single customer interaction or request. And obviously we can solve those problems. We can provide a single pane of glass. We don't have to do that. But I also think this, there are different ways to do that single pane of glass. For example, anybody who's spent time in contact centers has seen a lot of experiences that have been designed for agents where they've given you a single pane of glass, but they're going to give you every single possible data field and attribute. They're going to give you every possible tool to handle any customer, any question, any use case. And that also is not a good experience, right? Now, we have the ability to actually tailor, like we know who the customer is, we know what intent they have or what request they have, and therefore we know how to tailor the experience to help the customer with that specific request. And so I think, again, there's a lot of kind of detail behind, but it is actually worth it to tailor those experiences. And we now have the technology where we can do that in a much more kind of dynamic and easy to maintain way. So I'm totally with you. We should have solved this, but again, we have the ability to solve this, in a way that is very much in line with what we talked about earlier, which is we're thinking about it through the customer's lens, why they're contacting you, when they get to that live agent. How do we make sure we give that live agent not only the full context of that customer and why they're calling them, but we also tailor the solution and the tools they have so that they can quickly help them, with whatever their request is.
And I know the participants out there have this one thought in mind. I can almost hear you, even though I'm not seeing any chats yet. But anyway, but our data is bad, Michael. And I would say that every company we work with tells us their data is bad, but it still matters because bad data and fragmented systems aren't really an IT problem. They're a customer and customer experience problem that blocks growth. So you don't have to fix everything right away, but you have to figure out what are the most important metrics or most important pieces of data. Coming back to Michael's point earlier about designing around the customer, you also need to design your systems around your employees so they can better serve the customer.
Yep. And Jim, if I could just add one more point on this topic, I think the other thing to think about is it's not just about engaging the customer, capturing whatever request they have, making sure you can do that. That's obviously super important. But then you need to design your system so that you can actually take the action on behalf of that customer to solve their problem or fulfill their request. And I think that's something also we spend a lot of time on, is that oftentimes there is work required in some other team, some other part of the enterprise or system, if it's automated, to perform work on behalf of the customer. And so, it can't just be a contact center, agent talking to the customer to capture their issue and then hand it off. We really have to orchestrate and automate that fulfillment of that request.
And this matters. In that same study in manufacturing I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest impacts on a customer's willingness to grow with you was how did you resolve issues? It wasn't the presence of issues. 79% of the respondents had an issue with their supplier. But when they were completely satisfied with the resolution, the likelihood to grow grew by 50%. When felt no action was taken, that likelihood to grow dropped to 0%. How you resolve to issues is is the moment of truth that determines whether your customers will grow with you. And that's why this is so important. So let's see how we're doing right now with aligning AI strategy with customer priorities. In the survey, we found 4 key values in customer experience from customers: responsiveness, trustworthiness, security and privacy, and that emotional connection. And so we look at how we're doing. You can see that responsiveness, 32%. We're about at the third of the way they're investing. And that matters because when AI is deployed well, there's 59% less time on call notes, 49% faster resolution of issues, and 43% less stress on your reps, the ones who are creating that empathy and that human experience. So it matters. Trustworthiness to see is about the same. Security and privacy is even further ahead. So how about that emotional connection? Now, those of you who followed my writing, you know I write a lot about the importance of an emotional connection in the customer experience. So how are we doing using AI to create that emotional outcome? Well, not so well. And we look at the level of investment, you can see there's very little investment in the emotional connection. Much more around security, privacy, and speed. We're missing one of the critical outcomes. So, Mike, when you're looking at this research and you're looking and thinking about leaders, how they deploy AI, how should they do this to enhance people rather than just looking at it as a way to replace people?
Yeah, so I think you've hit on kind of the important topics, but I still think about an AI strategy like we're talking about customer experience and how can customer service and support impact customer experience. So I still feel like your AI strategy should be, how do I actually deliver the customer experience I want to deliver? How do I deliver the kind of outcomes that my customers want? And then obviously my staff that is supporting them. So I still think it needs to be a customer-centric strategy, and then you're looking at how can I apply AI to support that. And I think we've seen kind of a pattern of the customers that we work with, where customer service is a traditional, pretty conservative space. They want to start with how can I apply tools to support my existing process, like for example, how can I apply AI assist to agents when they're helping customers, and then they'll move to kind of a self-service application of AI for the customer self-service experience, and then moving all the way to what can I automate. So to me, it has to be in the context of how can I deliver a great customer experience, and how can I use AI as technology to do that. I think where you run into problems is where it's just AI first. How can I apply AI? Like it's AI to deliver a great outcome for a customer.
Definitely. And the risk is that as AI first interactions grow, there's a risk that we could dilute the interpersonal signals, that experience that matters. AI is powerful, no question about it. And we have implemented quite a bit at Heart of the Customer. I know many of you have as well, but it has to serve the relationship, not substitute it.
Yep.
We're going to go now to the 3 things that leaders should do. Now there's 30 in here, but we're going to give the top 3 that really to focus on. And the first one is measure differently. If you're stuck measuring NPS and customer satisfaction, hey, good for you, that's nice. It's not what most matters. What I found, so first of all, last year I interviewed 34 C-suite executives. What I found they most care about is growth. NPS doesn't predict growth. CSAT doesn't predict growth. We found in our survey, 81% of customers were satisfied. Only 24% plan to grow. Measure instead empathy, trust, whether customers feel valued, because that predicts how your customers will behave with financial outcomes. NPS doesn't do that. In fact, ServiceNow has the ability to use AI-powered sentiment analysis along with survey and effort scores to really see, are we creating that human experience we want? And so that's the first part. In fact, only 28% of organizations have figured out how to measure AI's impact on CX. So go back and rethink your measurement as number 1. Number 2, unify your systems. Give your employees one view of the customer so that there's no more swivel chair experience. That's not just a tech issue, that's a CX issue. And so how do we work to unify our systems so that our agents can better satisfy their customer? And then Michael, tell us about the third.
So I think this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, which is this is how can you use your CRM platform, like what we deliver from ServiceNow, in delivering a great customer experience. And we really think about it in terms of how do you engage your customer through self-service experiences, through assisted service experiences, and making sure that not only are you capturing those requests from your customers, but you're fulfilling that request. And oftentimes that means orchestrating across teams, across systems within your enterprise. And so I think it's still very much thinking about it outside in from a customer experience standpoint,
Yeah.
and then making sure that you're delivering it, whether it's a fully autonomous self-service experience or whether there is a human from a live agent standpoint, or a human in the middle or back office doing something on behalf of the customer, that all of these processes, all of these workflows are actually delivering that kind of outcome that you want for your customers.
Yeah, that really critical here as we look at that. Just look at these three things: measure differently, unify your system, but also all coming together by treating CRM as that really experienced platform, moving away from basically being an Excel file with customer names to really being a way where you can orchestrate your experience. And so I'm actually going to, we've talked a lot, brought in some of the questions. I'm going to jump right here to the wrap up. So 34,000 customers, reps, and executives are clear. AI has raised the bar. There's no going back. But the winners in this race will integrate and implement AI differently. There won't just be the fastest, but the ones who are fast and human. That's what we hear across our different sources, is that a human experience has not gone away. It's still critical. And those three things that you need to keep in mind are the measure what matters, unify your systems, and really use the CRM as a differentiator for your business. Michael, wrap us up here.
No, thanks, Jim, for the time and great conversation. I just really think this is an exciting place to be in this space at this time with all the investment in AI and all the capabilities we have now. But it's still really about delivering that human experience to your customers. And as Jim mentioned earlier, oftentimes that means also the experience for your employees, for your partners on behalf of those customers. So there's so much changing so fast. But to me, it's still all about thinking about that experience that you want to deliver to your customer.
100%. Michael, thank you for spending time with us today. ServiceNow, thank you for sponsoring. You will find the report in the comments and invite you to respond there, share your reactions, share your questions, and above everything else, make sure that you're making a human connection. On behalf of ServiceNow, I'm Jim Tincher with Heart of the Customer, and we're excited to present to you the biggest study in CX, the most comprehensive one I've ever seen. Go out and use it.